Good afternoon, everyone. ePlanning program is digitally transforming the planning ecosystem within New South Wales. When we first started our digital journey, there were quite a few challenges that we had to deal with the existing planning processes. As an example, most of the systems were paper-based, which means an applicant, if they want to submit an application, they had to physically go to their council during the business hours and submit the application over the counter. Once the council reviews the application, and if they needed additional information, and supposing if the applicant doesn't have the information readily available, they may have to make multiple trips. The other challenge with the paper-based system is the tracking. Tracking was either non-existent or where it existed, it got difficult to track the application once an application was referred to an agency and the agency happens to take more time than anticipated. The other aspect, the data and information. Getting an accurate picture of what's happening on the ground was very difficult. What's happening, how many DAs were approved in my area? By the time that sort of information came out into the open data or open domain, the application information was for the applications lodged in the previous financial year, which means it's not an accurate representation of what's happening on the ground when the data was used. Further, the steps in the process were a bit disconnected, meaning step 2 of the process within the end-to-end planning process required a different set of applications to be submitted back to the council. And often, it may have information that was previously submitted as part of step 1. So although receiving system already knows the information about that particular applicant or the nature of the development that they are proposing, because there is no way to easily tie it back to the step 2, such a situation occurred. So with these types of challenges on hand, we started our digital journey with a vision and aspiration to make the planning process really simpler and easier for everyone to interact with. The other aspect, again, as most people expect in current day and age, being able to track the status of their application. And the digital environment opens the possibility to make the analytics of the development application or a particular planning process on hand at any time for the anticipated users. And finally, along the process, our vision was to come up with some standards, which was also an issue or a problem or shortcoming with the existing process. As an example, submitting the same planning process, 2 neighboring councils may have different steps. So supposing you're a developer or an architect and have customers in 2 neighboring councils, you may have to go through different process. So with that, we started with our vision and aspiration, and we have delivered our vision via our digital services. The digital services are based on self-service portals, and you can track the information at any point in time. All the actors, all the players within the process gets to see transparently the current status of the process, as well as that also opened up for publishing the real-time data analytics. And coming to the standards, we have been, through this process, able to standardize the planning process, and be it the application forms, event notifications. As an example, when the application gets submitted, there is a certain set of people involved in the process gets notified, standardize that event notification process. Also, we were able to publish some technical standards and API specifications that our stakeholders are able to use to better integrate into our ePlanning ecosystem. In terms of the scope of our digital transformation, we are being guided by the EP&A Act, and as such, we are considering the entire parts from under the Act, rather than a piecemeal approach. So this will give an end-to-end portfolio-based customer experience to our users, and also that will enable them to participate along the full journey. Our focus this year mainly has been on development assessment in terms of the DAs and CNRs, and on the contribution and payment space, as well as the post-consent certificates. But into the near future, we are also developing digital solutions for plan-making process, digital EPI process, as well as SCC certificates. We are not doing this in isolation, obviously. Our users are a whole range of stakeholders, starting with local government, agencies, and industry, as well as mom and dads. As you can appreciate, we got 128 LGAs across New South Wales, and also 31 agencies to who the councils can refer the DA applications to. We have additionally 70 agencies that non-statutory referrals can be made to. And finally, we have about more than 1,000 private certifiers certifying the CDC certificates. Also 60,000 applications being submitted in New South Wales every year. So imagine the ecosystem of stakeholders and coming up with a solution to meet the requirements of the stakeholders, as well as bringing along the journey is quite important, which I'm going to talk about in the next slides. Just a quick view of what we have been able to achieve within the last 10 to 11 months, which will be a nice segue into our delivery and change methodology. Each of the boxes that you see on there is either a new digital service or an enhancement to a previously released digital service. So starting from top left, in January, we released our online concurrence and referral system. This is where a council can refer a DA back to an agency for their advice. And we had a subsequent enhancement release in March, followed by our ePlanning portal being enhanced in May, along with our Spatial viewer, which is also an important component of our planning ecosystem. I won't go through each and every box, but as you can see, we've been quite busy through the year. And sometimes we had multiple deliveries coming through in the same month. So when you have such an ambitious services being planned, it's quite important for you to get the right mix of your teams, capabilities, your delivery methods, bring as well as your change management methodology, bring along your stakeholders along the journey as well. And what has worked for us is working with lean development teams. When I say that, it's a small teams of a mix of developers, that's software developers, BAs, our product owners, as well as a trial group of stakeholders. We also believe in small chunks. We release in small chunks, the minimum viable products. We believe in prototyping rather than spending extensive amount of time in developing a elaborate requirements documents. So with the prototyping methodology, it has enabled us to produce a concept into a working model in a really quick time period, and enabled the technical teams to interact with our stakeholders as well as our product owners. That has also enabled a mutual learning exercise. So the developers are able to see the stakeholders' viewpoint, and the stakeholders and product owners, who are more often than not are less technical compared to the developers, they've been able to appreciate how the system works. So that has not only allowed to come up with the features that works for both sides, but also arrive at a sweet spots. And we do follow the agile methodology, and we allow for changes as late as we can accommodate. Obviously, not everything can be accommodated always, so we have to do a bit of an impact analysis and consider each change that comes through. And also, where a feature seems to be a repeating functionality, we take a platform approach. What I mean by that is, as an example, email notifications are pretty common across our planning processes. Whenever something happens, all the parties involved in that process get notified. So through our initial delivery, we've been able to come up with a template. When I say platform solution, I'm not just talking about the software modules or routines. We are also talking about the artifacts. As an example, the email template, which is a Word document, which has a header, footer, and the body, we've been able to reuse down to that level through our entire journey. That has obviously saves the time as you progress along the journey, as well as maintains the consistency across the board. And we are open by default. When I say open, it's just not the open data. And of course, we publish all our data as open, be it spatial or planning information. But we are also talking about the ideas, the vision, sharing the vision with our stakeholders. And finally, I think I mentioned the build with or not for, involving your stakeholders along the journey makes them take the ownership, makes them contribute to the product, as well as take the ownership and be the champions when they go back to their organizations for implementation. Just a bit more on the change methodology. As I previously mentioned, we have a complex or diverse set of stakeholders involved in the digital transformation journey. So what has worked for us is to identify the change champions within the trial set of agencies that we are working with and empower them, basically make them feel as part of the team. They are part of the team. They are not different from the internal teams. Therefore, their feedback is being actively considered, and where it had to be prioritized, they are kept, the communication is kept open and they are being kept up to date. And finally, also lead by change is another main concept where some of the state assessed systems we've been able to implement along the same, in parallel with the process where the applications are assessed outside the department. So basically setting an example that we are undergoing as a department through the same digital journey as you are. And just expand a bit more on the change methodology, the pilot groups are identified based on the digital service that is being rolled out, and they are being engaged as part of the entire development journey. And once we are ready to roll out the service, it's just rolled out to that particular pilot group, and we work with them to be able to not only iron out any issues, also identify any critical functionality that may be missing, which will help adopt a future set of stakeholders. And also our change and training team works with them in developing the best practices, be it the training manuals, be it tweaking the process to accommodate their business process in a better way. And finally, once we have a version 1 or version 2, and obviously this is not a standard for all digital services, based on the type of digital service, we offer it to a bigger set of stakeholder group. Just getting a bit more into each digital service, the ePlanning portal you can access from planningportal.nsw.gov.au, and the URL is actually in the Act, which means if there are any MOG changes like we have undergone in New South Wales in the recent times, the URL still stays intact because it's part of the Act. This is the entry point to all our digital services, and where you can find wealth of information regarding planning. There are also links to other digital services. For example, if you want to lodge your online DA from this page. If you have been to Planning Portal in the past, then end of May, you may have noticed a refresh of the portal, where we have organized the browsing pattern to align with the EP&A Act. So it's easier, and as expected, by the planners and mom and dads equally. And we also have been able to consolidate some of the information that we previously had to give an enriched experience, and also reduce the number of clicks for the end users. Just the online DA process, we currently have about 27 applications that have come through the ePlanning portal. We have 21 councils and about several other councils that have coming on board as of 1st of January 2019. They are taking care of the change management practices internal to their organizations, and as soon as they are ready, they'll be coming on board as well. Just a quick view of the process involved in the online DA. The pre-lodgement, where applicant can register on our website, much like in any other online system. Once they verify the account, they can log in, they lodge an application. The application process guides them through the type of documents that are required. Therefore, once it gets to the council, then council gets notified, the respective council gets notified, and council has a dashboard view. They have a basket they can assign to, allocate the work as per their internal workings. Once council does the pre-assessment, they are happy with it, then they can accept the application, at which point the application gets lodged. And then the assessment takes place, and which results in a determination through the system. At any point through the process, any significant changes, the applicant gets notified. So that is where the transparency is being brought into, so the applicant can check the status at any point. And through the online DA system, the application can be referred to other business processes. For example, previously I mentioned we are considering the entire ecosystem under EP&A Act, and this slide here is a reflection of that. You can see the concurrence and referral, which could be a sub-process based on where your development is occurring. For example, I may be proposing a development in a bushfire area, in which case the council might need to refer my application back to RFS. Then that process can be triggered to DA Online. I may be in a new release area, which means a SIC contribution or special infrastructure contribution applies to me, so the SIC contribution path can be triggered from online DA. And down at the bottom, those are post-consent certificates. They could be triggered as well through the system. And finally, based on the feedback and from the councils, we also created the APIs, so councils can integrate their property and rating systems into ePlanning system, so they can continue to work the way they are used to while the applications are coming through the ePlanning system. This is an application tracker, so there are at least a couple of ways the application could be tracked by logging into the system, or the applicant could come to the application tracker, access it through their mobile or iPad. Online concurrence and referral. These were 1,800 applications through the system, and more than 1,000 have already received a decision. And this is going to be mandated as of 1st of January, which means all 128 councils and all the agencies will be onboarded as of 1st of January. And you could compare that to the current process where the checks are cut manually. There is a process, they go out in a regular mail, and there is a process involved as well as a clearing fee involved. And imagine the administrative burden when the agencies are receiving the information through mail and through email, through Dropbox, as opposed to the current system where there is a single way of receiving the information. These are the list of councils we've been collaborating. You can see various state agencies. We are also collaborating with the pipeline companies and energy companies. A future collaboration, I'm just going to move on to Spatial Viewer, which is also an important component as we manage the spatial the planning GIS datasets as part of the program as well. The view on the left is more of a comprehensive view that allows a policy person to look at the landscape of the planning controls as they exist. And the view on the right is more, you can search for an address and see all the planning controls that apply to your property. The button, you can see a button on there, which is a property report. You can print a property report, which is like a 10.7 certificate, as it is called. It's a planning certificate. And in terms of the architecture, it is, we are completely Esri-based platform, and this page here is built with AngularJS and single-page application mechanism. All the data through the Spatial Viewer is exposed as APIs, which means we are able to use the data as part of our online DA process. If you're able to see the bottom part of the screen, for the address in question where the DA being placed, all the planning controls are being shown. And the bottom two ones are Sydney Trains referrals because the property happens to be in the Sydney Trains area. Therefore, this is an early advice both to the applicant as well as the council that they perhaps need to consider. Of course, they need to do their due diligence, consider referring the application back to the Sydney Trains. So this is allowing us to, obviously, evidence-based decision making. Also, data coming from a single source of truth, which is our spatial data sitting in the New South Wales planning database. Just to wrap up quickly on the architecture, all our workflow system is in Pega, that's sitting on the top left, and our GIS is completely Esri, and all our information or the data is exposed through spatial as well as non-spatial APIs, going through our integration platform, which is all Azure-based, and it's a microservices-based architecture, exposed, built through Service Fabric and exposed through the API management gateway. What's not shown here is our content management system, which is a Drupal-based system. With that, I think I'm running out of time. However, I would like to quickly play a video, just a promotional video. Is there a way to play the... Okay. Sorry. That's all right. You'll find the URL on the presentation. Just quickly flicking through, this is the planning portal. And as mentioned, the organization of the menus is in accordance with the EP&A Act. If I'm a mom and dad and looking to build a granny flat, as an example, I mean, they usually come and check the development assessment, where I can find local development information, which has all the DA-based information, and followed by a registration where I can register and submit an application. I'll just have a quick snapshot of the DA process as well right here, where I'm logged in as an applicant, and you can see I can lodge the CDC's free tree voucher, that's another initiative, DAs, the state VPS, and so on and so forth. Just to save some time, I started a DA process where you can see the address 24 Carlton Crescent, Summerhill. Similar, the referrals there, that's coming from the spatial side. Okay. And from the main page, you can also access the application tracker, where I can, obviously, once it's lodged, I can see, I can check the status of my application. And finally, I can't end the demo without the spatial, because I'm a spatial guy, much like probably most of you are. This is a spatial viewer where I can look for an address, and I'm going to search for the same address. And as you can see, the same information is being displayed as part of the search results. I can optionally download the property report. Let's see if it works, because I'm running off of my mobile network. But once it does download, you can get a nice property report with all the summary of planning controls. That's about it.